And that meant human figure, animal figure, any figure which they said was created by God and therefore could not be depicted. Now, this led to some pretty bizarre things, like, for example, if you had a mannequin in a shop, you would have to chop its head off, deforming traffic signals, but even going into the Kabul Museum and chopping off faces of statues which were 5,000 years old. So you would go into the Kabul Museum and you'd see all these incredibly old statues with their heads chopped off. And that was pretty depressing, I can tell you. The Taliban then insisted that for passports, men would have their photographs and women would have their fingerprints. This was not allowed in many countries, obviously. Anyway, they allowed some studios to open, ostensibly to take passport photographs. And these studios then started taking clandestine pictures of young Taliban.
I didn't take these pictures. I found them and I want to make them public because I think they're great.
Because a lot of people thought that it was my way of representing the Taliban, that I went to Afghanistan, photographed the Taliban and made them look like Gilbert and Georges gay icons, which they chose to do it themselves. So I got a lot of criticism in Europe from the sort of liberal PC left who found it demeaning for me to make them look like this. And they chose to look like that.
These images are very, very typical of the kind of pictures that people are taking today. People will go to a studio and the pictures will be very staged and there will be makeup and you'll brush your hair, do your turban. You know, there's this air of mystery about them simply because these studios were only semi-legal. These pictures were not permissible and these young men, you know, are showing affection to each other. You know, at that time all this was illegal.
It was a couple of weeks after the Taliban were kicked out of Kandahar by the anti-Taliban alliance, supported by the Americans. Opposite of the hotel was a whole row of photo studios who were about to reopen because they had been banned under the Taliban. So now they're cleaned out their windows and put up their new signs. It was this sort of life restoring again after the departure of the Taliban. And so I saw these pictures. I just saw them in the window, went up to them and asked if I could see more of them, if I could buy them or if I could take them, and they were very happy to give them to me. They didn't understand why I was interested, and they thought like some stupid Westerner wants these stupid pictures.
It's a very feminine culture. They're very feminine with their whole black eyeliner and their little guns and their flowers and holding hands and everything.
There is a very strong homosexual tradition in which an elder man will kind of adopt a young man and become lover, become student, and teach him whatever skills he may have. The Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Umar, attacked and killed a warlord who was keeping young boys as his concubines. And in fact, that move was the start of the Taliban movement. It was a movement against oppression. So one of the first things Mullah Omar did was to ban homosexuality. But in fact, I mean, given the sort of long-standing traditions of this in southern Afghanistan, this continued. But it was done very surreptitiously because the Taliban had very strict rules about it. Tribesmen wear a lot of coal in the eyes, and actually it has a lot of health benefit because coal protects you from the glare of the sun, and it also protects you in dust storms from the eye being damaged by grit. So traditionally, nomads and tribesmen have worn a lot of coal. Secondly, Afghan nomads wear their hair very long, which is also a tradition. And thirdly, I mean, Afghans love having their pictures taken, and certainly if you remember the 1980s during the war against the Soviets, no Afghan would hesitate to have his picture taken with his gun and etc. And But they would always kind of try and do themselves up. They'd comb their beard, they comb their hair, they tie their turban properly. They were always very self-conscious, even in the 80s. And that tradition has continued.
The Taliban, they're not like altar boys, so they're pretty nasty people.
Many of the pictures that we see are actually very, very young Taliban. These are what you would call perhaps not the original Taliban who came in 94, but Taliban who were recruited from the villages, from Pakistan as late as perhaps, 99, 2000. And they were not necessarily all kind of imbued with that original Taliban strictness and Taliban ideology. They came in, to fight with the Taliban because they believed in them, but they didn't necessarily believe in all the restrictions of the Taliban.
Photographers have done something very, very beautiful, maybe without being aware of it. That they've taken pictures of people who ban photography, but have such a desire to be photographed that the flesh is more willing than the spirit.